I'm Matt Verjanik from InlayBanding.com. What I'm going to do today is try to demonstrate to you how I'll inlay a simple banding using the Microfence. I make and sell inlay bandings like the satinwood banding that I'm going to demonstrate. This is a plain banding. I make fancy bandings and all sorts of, I don't know how well you can see this, but there's different types of bandings. This is just a sample board, and these can be had at www.inlaybanding.com. Now, as you can see, I've got a scrap piece of plywood here, and I'm already made a test cut to ensure that the depth of the banding is correct. And you can see, I'll tell you, it fits, it stands by itself. And the depth and the width is correct. And the way you set the width is I make one pass. I make one pass, and I use a 1/4 inch router bit that cuts about 245 thousandths. 250 would be optimal, but it's about 245, and my banding is about 255. So what I did was I adjusted my width of the groove 10 thousandths over, and then I made a second pass, and the second pass then makes the groove about 255 thousandths, which is about the width of my banding, and it fits perfect. I always like to do a test cut in a scrap piece. It's not a good idea to take and do your final cut in your masterpiece so you don't ruin it. But anyway, here's my piece. It's a piece of Babinga, which is African mahogany. I'm sorry, African rosewood. And what I've done is I've put two lines. I put a pencil mark line here and here, and that's the I don't want to go beyond that distance when I route that groove in there. So I'm going to set I started at 30 thousandths there on the micrometer, so I'm going to set that back to there. I'm just going to ease this in. Oh, this thing comes with a couple little lights on it too. You notice the Microfence has a couple of lights that come with it that they're little LEDs, and they really make it nice that you can see what you're doing a lot better. So now I'm going to back this off. I had it set at 30, and I'm going to put it back at 40, and that will make my groove 10 thousandths wider. Very snug. Now if it's a little bit too wide right in here, I can just take and run a sandpaper block along the edge and get it to fit perfectly, but that's pretty good. Okay, I've gone and routed the other grooves in there, and we're ready to square up our corners and inlay the banding. Now I don't know if you can see it on here, but I've drawn a couple of lines from, I just took a machinist rule and drawn a couple of lines where I want that corner to extend to. And I'm just going to eyeball this, and I can tell about where I want it on which side of that little line I drew. And all I'm going to do is take a little cut that way this way and take a very small chisel, get that piece out of there. Now my corner's square. We'll miter the corners on the satinwood banding, and it should fit right in that corner. So now my banding fits nice and snug thanks to the Microfence. So I'll put it in and draw a line where I want this corner mitered, and I'll show you another trick on how I like to do that. First, I'm just going to cut this off and leave maybe a 1/16 of an inch out there. Now, I personally have found that this is the most effective way. I've got a little fence I put on there that it makes this at 45 degrees. And I just sand my banding up to that line, and it makes for a pretty good fit. Okay, I've gone and cut all 4 of my pieces, got the edges mitered, and now I'm going to use just regular wood glue. It's like Tight Bond yellow glue is what it is, and I'll put all these pieces in, and they should fit exactly right, nice and snug, thanks to the Microfence. Now the Microfence, like I said, is made by Richard Weidler, and he is at microfence.com, and you can get all the information out there you want from him. And it really makes a simple job of putting in a inlay banding. Now, if you find the need to clamp this, and I do, I just take a piece of plywood and cover it with wax paper so that the glue doesn't stick to the caul, and I'll just put these together, clamp them up, and let them sit for maybe 15 minutes or half an hour, and I'll ensure a good bond on that banding. Okay, I've gone and sanded this off. When you inlay the banding, you just inlay it so it stands up just a little bit proud of the level of the wood that you're inlaying it in, and then you just can either scrape it off or sand it off. In this case, I just sanded it off, and it makes for a nice smooth installation. Okay, let's take a closer look at the Microfence system. This is a Bosch Colt router, which is mounted in the Microfence plunge base with the edge guide, and the router can be replaced, and adapters can be bought from Richard Weidler Microfence for most small trim routers, and also the edge guide will attach directly to the router base or to other routers with the correct adapters. But the nice thing about the plunge base is it enables you to get your plunge adjusted to within 1/1000th of an inch increments, and also the edge guide has a micrometer. These are built-in micrometers that are made to machinist tolerances, and the edge guide will also adjust using this knob 1/1000th of an inch increments. So it really makes for a nice tool to do inlay bandings.